Hey guys, this is Philip from Stevenson Motor Co. And on today's episode, we're doing something pretty cool. We are comparing short shifters. Now, this episode is sponsored by Mini Mania, and it's awesome for us. We really like their store. They've helped us out a lot, and they're allowing us to do this test, which we've wanted to kind of do for a while, and nerd out on different short shifters that are available for the Mini. So these are the main two shifters that people will put into their Mini. You have your stock shifter, and then you have these short shifters. This one here in the blue is made by a company called KAD, and this is the more expensive of the two. And then we've got this one here that's made by Mini Mania, Mini Spares, and it's a more budget-friendly option. So today we're going to be going through both these shifters. We're going to be talking about the design of them. We're going to be talking about build quality, ease of installation. We're actually going to be measuring the throw on both of them so that hopefully by the end of the episode, you'll be able to decide which shifter is right for you. So first we're going to talk a little bit about the design on them. The first one here, KD shifter. This is the more expensive, like I mentioned. It is a really nice piece, really high quality finish. The machining on it is excellent. It has some kind of cool features that either the short shifter here or the stock shifter don't have. One of which being this release collar. This is the reverse lockout. So normally on these rod change shifters, in order to get into reverse, you go over to the gate and then you lift the actual whole shifter up and move it over. On this one, the lockout is internal here, and then you lift up on the collar, and that allows you to go into the reverse gate. This just makes it much more solid because the actual shifter isn't sliding up and down in the housing, and it's just kind of a neat feature to stop it from going into reverse by accident. So that's something that this has that the other ones don't. The other one is that the housing here, which attaches to the factory Mini housing, is actually a sealed unit, and it has a Zerk fitting on it, so it's greasable. This is pretty cool because the factory one here, or the other aftermarket one, just attaches on top of the stock shifter housing, and you have to kind of pull it apart and put grease in here. That grease kind of works its way out, so it's really handy to be able to just attach your grease gun to the side and fill that up. Talking about some other kind of details of it, obviously the build quality on this one is really nice. If you can see it up close, it's just high quality. This one also appears to be of really good quality. There are a couple of differences in terms of things that I noticed right off the bat. The main one is something you actually can't see until you pull it apart, and what it is when you pull the shifter out, you see the size of the kind of ball and socket that sits here and here. It's much smaller. This one here for the aftermarket, a more inexpensive unit, is the same size as the factory, which works fine. It also has the one locating slot here and a locating dowel in here. This prevents the shifter from rotating like this, side to side. One thing that I want to mention is that we have seen through the shop several cars that have come through that have had shifters where this slot has worn out, and when that happens, when you go to shift, this actually kind of swings left to right, and it really makes a big difference on how precise the shifters feel. Now if we compare that to the KAD one, it's kind of interesting. So with the KAD one, it has this collar here that you unscrew, and if you pull it apart, you can see, first of all, that this piece here is much larger than the OEM or more inexpensive version here. So that just gives you more surface area. There's less wear points on it, and then also if you look at the slot here, it's much bigger. The actual pin that goes into this housing is much thicker, so to prevent that rounding that I was speaking about earlier. They both still are single pin. Would be preferable, I think, to have two pins to locate them. A lot of other auto manufacturer aftermarket shifters have two locating pins. Both of these just have the one, but the KD one is a lot larger, and you wouldn't know that unless you disassembled it like this. So that's a major design difference. The other thing is, because the reverse lockout is integrated into the shifter here, They don't need to require the actual shifter to move up and down in the housing. So instead of a spring on the top like the factory one or this one has, it has a little nylon sleeve here that when you thread this together, that creates the tension that holds the shifter tight. And we will compare once we install them on how the actual shifters feel, but I feel like that will probably make a big difference because there's an inherent tension here that there won't have with this one. All right, so you join us in the car. We've removed the carpets and the shift gaiter here just so we can have ease of access to the shifter. Right now we've got the stock shifter in place. Again, this is a rod chain shifter. We've got our shift knob on it right now. We're gonna be using this shift knob, the same shift knob for both this shifter and the Mini Mania shifter. The KED shifter has its own shift knob and it's not the same thread pitch as the classic Mini one. So that is a point of reference. So you need to use their shift knob, but it does come with the kit. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be taking like 3 measurements from here, also kind of just giving a feel for how it is, so we can compare it. First measure we're going to be taking is between first and second gear, and we're going to be measuring the total distance of the throw. We're also going to be measuring the distance in between the neutral gate. And then once it's in gear, we'll choose a particular gear, in this case third gear, so it's always the same. We're just going to kind of measure the slop side to side so you'll be able to tell what it's kind of like in there. So let's get to it. So for the front to back, I'm going to take a tape measure and we're going to measure right off of the dash rail here, and then I'll be able to see the distance. So we're going to start it. I'm doing first and second, so that's right at 8 inches. 14 inches. So that's a 6-inch throw right there, front to back. Side to side, let's take a look. And that's 3 inches side to side. And now third gear, kind of hold it there. So it's looking like it's about 1 inch of slop when it's in gear. Now obviously this dimension is going to change depending on your linkages and stuff, but this will give you a good test to see how it'll fare in your car. So that's it for the stock shifter. We're going to remove this shifter and go ahead and install the KED one next. We're not going to cover how the install goes because we actually have another video on that. Link will be in the description. So the next time you see us, we'll have the KED shifter installed. All right, so we just installed the KED shifter. Went in really simply. First impression, the shifter is way tighter than before. Talking about in-gear slop, essentially there is none now. The only movement is from the flex in the rubber bushings. We went ahead and measured it, and first to second gear, which was previously 6-inch throw, is now to 3 1/4 inches. So essentially half of the throw distance. And side to side, which was I believe 3 inches, is now 1 1/4 inches. So it's much tighter. The feel of the shifter, honestly, it feels like a new car. The old one felt like a 1970s Mini. This feels akin to kind of any modern hot hatch front wheel drive setup. So really impressed with this. Install really simple. So as first impressions, KED gets really high marks. This feels awesome. Let's see if the cheaper alternative can have a similar feel. All right, so now we're going to install the Mini Mania shifter. It installs the exact same way as the KED shifter using the 2 self-tapping screws here. But on this housing, unlike the KED shifter, which has the reverse lockout on the little pull tab, we're going to need to retain the factory reverse lockout spring. That is this piece right here. So it's this cover here with this nylon bushing and a spring underneath. This locks in to the housing and allows the shifter to be pulled up and down when you need to get into the reverse gate. Now, Unfortunately with this, we are going to need to cut the stock shifter right here to be able to take the nylon piece and the spring off. So your stock shifter won't be reusable after installing this. So that is one downside to this piece. Other than that though, should be really simple. We'll just cut this off, clean them up and install them on the new shifter. And then from there, it's installed the exact same way as the KAD one. Whew, that's not bad. All right, so we've cut up the stock shifter and salvaged the parts needed. The metal cup that goes on top, I cleaned that up and that's painted, just letting that dry right now. I've also got the little nylon cup here, again, clean that up. Then you got a washer right here and a spring on the bottom. So once these are all together, we can install the shifter. First though, we need to install the little housing here. When you're installing this, there's the one pin, locating pin inside. Just make sure that when you're sitting in the car, this is facing the right-hand side. All right, so we've got the shifter all installed and we've been kind of feeling it, seeing how it goes. It feels really good. It feels very similar to the KAD one. We measured the throw and it's a little bit longer between first and second gear, just by about 1/4 inch. Side to side, the play is exactly the same. The one difference is when it's in gear, side to side, there's almost no slop, just like the KAD one. However, fore and aft, you can see there's a little bit of slop. And I think this is also the reason why the first and second gear is a little bit longer. It's because, not because there's slop in the shifter, but the housing, the CNC'd housing, I notice is not actually sitting completely flush to the factory housing, and it's in fact rotating slightly on the two self-tapping screws. So that's allowing this little bit of play. This could be just this particular housing, although it didn't do this with the KAD, or it could just be a slight variance in the tolerance of this piece, but it's something worth noting. Other than that though, feels very similar. Reverse, exactly like stock, because you are using the stock spring, and the height and everything actually feels exactly the same. The difference being that with this one you have to use your old shifter shift knob, so that's the same as factory. But all things considered, I think it feels pretty good. All right, so that's a review for these two shifters. Now, at the starting of the video, we said we would go over build quality, ease of install, and shifter throw. And let's do a little recap right now. So just to give you an idea right at the get-go, these are in very different price brackets. The KAD one here retails for $268 US, and this one here is 85. So it is about 3 times more expensive, and as you'd expect, it is definitely better. The build quality on this is second to none. The machining is great. All of the materials you can tell are really, really high quality, and it just feels like a really quality piece. For the price, I will say that this one is excellent. The machining on it is very good. It's about the same size as this one, so that the actual short throw is almost identical. As we pointed out in the video with this one, there is about a 1/2 inch longer throw, and that is because of the fact that this housing is able to shift on the original Mini one. And after seeing that, we did some searching. We found out that the spacing in between where the roll pin or self-tapping screw sits and the base of this machined surface, which sits on the original Mini housing, on the KAD one, it is 3 millimeters taller, and you can sort of see that right there. That means that the KAD billet housing here sits flush on the Mini housing, and the screws here are just held to retain it in place. They're not actually there for any structural support. Whereas this one here, this piece is actually allowed to float a little bit and rock back and forth, and that's what both equates to the little bit longer throw and also to the slightly less precise feeling of the shifter. when shifting the shifters, you can really tell the difference. The KD one feels buttery smooth, and I think you also be able to tell even from the video that it goes into gear really nice, and there's almost no slop anywhere in its movement. In this one, there is a little bit more slop, but it's to be expected with something that's about the third of the price. So it's pretty much up to you on what one you decide to go with. I would say for a budget build, this is an excellent option. Our personal choice has always been with the KD shifters, and once again proved that it's just an awesome piece. But like I said, it is definitely more expensive, so you have to decide where you want to put the money in your build. Thanks again for watching. I hope this video helped you out. Make sure to like and subscribe below, and check out Mini Mania's website. Big shout out to them. Thank you for sponsoring this video. We've always been interested to do this test, and we were really excited to be able to do it and be able to share it with you. Also, big shout out to Edison, who let us borrow his beautiful car for this video. Make sure to check him out on Instagram. And as always, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.